And we're going to open up questions, so if anyone's got a question, please don't mind stepping towards where that camera is, because that's where the microphone is. So if anyone's got a question, does that make it more scary? Yeah, well, come on first. Yeah.
How you doing?
Good, yourself?
That was brilliant, fantastic, really enjoyed that.
Thank you. I like your Yellow Submarine.
Yellow Submarine, yeah.
It's happening.
Yellow Submarine. Okay. So it kind of just what you were talking about with production, and obviously it changing, and the technology's obviously got a lot better, right? The technology associated.
Not necessarily better, different.
But that's my question. That's what I was going to ask. Yeah. As technology's improved, how has it changed production and music? If that makes sense.
I think the best example of that would be this FL Studio software, and the young generation of producers that are using everything in their laptop only to make musical compositions that are like the top hip hop and trap kind of things, and they have singers sing on top of that. So the whole idea about using just a laptop and software to make music is very innovative. It's so creative and cool. But for my job, recording like a drummer and a guitar player playing together in a room, I'm still using old German microphones and British and US preamps and a room and Fender guitars and it's still very much the same kind of technology, just recording on computer, but it sounds very much the same and it feels the same. Okay. Yeah. So there's advantages and definitely breakthroughs on certain levels, and a return to the standard practices all along as well.
Anyone else? Lucy?
I've got a question actually.
Lucy.
So when I think about like music producer, I don't know, I think about someone like Phil Spector, you know what I mean, who comes into a room and he's got a complete idea of what he's in, the wall of sound and all this sort of stuff. And you've worked with some really different bands. How are you putting your thumbprint on it, or is it more about listening to what they actually want? I mean, how does it work with the kind of ego of the artist versus what you've got your own personal taste?
Well, a lot of times I don't actually get to meet a band in person until I come off an airplane in Argentina or Brazil or Seattle. Like I'm meeting them for the first time. But we've had discussions about, I've heard some demos, we've discussed how we're going to do it and this and that. So sometimes it takes a few days of me just doing, like recording basically, like do you like this sound, do you like this sound, are we doing the right thing, like asking them if we're doing the right thing, and then maybe by day 5 I'm starting to get a real vision, because now I can hear what they're building much clearer than the demos. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes, like in Regina's case, I had an actual vision of 11 microphones and running things in different, like that's not very often that happens. Most of the time, the main thing on my mind is these people are paying me money, and I want to make sure that whatever they want to happen and whatever they have in their mind is what we get to try first. So I think that my biggest, my most common asset as a producer, and I've been fired for this as well, because people say, you're not doing very much, you're just pushing some buttons and putting microphones in. But a lot of people really appreciate the fact that they have these wacky ideas, even though they're 22 years old or 23 and I'm much older, like they had some ideas they thought could work, and I actually gave them the space to try it without pulling the card like, no, we don't need to do that, we're running out of time. That doesn't work. Believe me, I don't ever do that. I did it one time, it's in the book, but I learned from that. And people did it to me all the time as a young musician, like, we don't do that in the big studio. That's how you do it at home. And then the music would suffer. So I think my biggest thing is just whatever makes them happy. If they think this is a cool sound and they're all jumping up and down and smiling, then I've turned the right buttons and I'm doing my job properly. That's it, basically.
I've got a couple for you, if that's all right.
Do it. I like your shirt.
Thank you very much. You know who it is? Gang of Four. That's a Damien Hirst job.
Yeah,
wow. What's a recent album?
Yeah, when Pete Gill died, or Andy Gill died,
right.
They put this album together, and they got loads of different bands to record Gang of Four songs.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it's really good.
Yeah.
So
I worked with Dave Allen, one of the original bassists. I actually lived with him for a while in California and got signed on his record label.
I was interested very much in reading the book, and I've only got halfway through it.
That's good.
Because I'm a terrible reader. I only read music books, as you can see from the kind of stuff that I've got in here.
Yeah.
But you seem to be really influenced by British bands.
Good point. Good point. That's why I live in England right now.
I just wondered why.
Why? I mean, there are a few American bands that really were influential on me.
Was it the prog thing?
The prog thing, I don't know, first it was the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, you know, and Led Zeppelin and all that. And then then as a keyboard player, hearing Rick Wakeman play with Yes, is like, I'm going to grow up and have a circle of synthesizers around me for sure. You know, that's like 15-year-old me was definitely going to be Rick Wakeman.
So you like guitar, but you obviously love the Moog and all that
I love synthesizers. I like the Stooges and the Velvet Underground, even though the Velvet Underground has viola.
It's cool. I mean, I'm really, really enjoying what I've read in the book, and I'm a terrible reader, as I've said.
Also, it was
actually on that point. Is there an audio book? Plans for an audio book for terrible readers like myself and Tony?
Yeah, we're working on it. But I want to say that even as a young teenager, it wasn't lost on me that my favorite superhero, Jimi Hendrix, was dying of starvation in New York City until some British guy from the Animals, Chaz Chandler, brought him to London. And the next day he was jamming with Eric Clapton and putting Cream in a fear mode along with Pete Townsend and Jeff Beck. You know, that's because something British happened that allowed that legend to shine. And then, I'm from Seattle, and our little grunge scene would never have been anything if people in the UK didn't think, hey look, they look like loggers with their little plaid shirts, but they play electric guitar. That is a hoot. Bring them on over. We want to see this. Tad, Mudhoney, you know, it all became. So it was never lost on me that the UK was a magic watering ground for the music I like.
Halfway through the book, that sings loud for me. The other question I've got to ask you is, the Strokes worked with, and he worked live. He was the backline guy for all the shows. Was a Scottish guy from Govan called Brian Dunn.
I know. I met him 100 times.
And I wanted to ask you.
He was a sweetheart. Yeah, I met him 100 times. He's a really sweet guy.
He's out with Liam Gallagher just now. But from what I hear,
double dating.
He's done every single Strokes gig.
Yeah.
That right up to even the Albert gigs and the Julian gigs where he done the solo album.
Yeah, I saw him on the Julian tours.
So I wanted to know if you'd met him.
I met him. I've hung out with him.
So the real next door came from his brother Brian.
Okay.
And they were directly related to Michael McNeil from Simple Minds.
Okay.
So that's where I got that. So
Tony, that's not really a question. That was. Sorry. Just before we have a question, I know it's a short. Sorry, I know it's a short, but it's like we can talk after this. But that is a brilliant reel to reel. That is by Simple Minds. And can we have another round of applause for Tony? Thank you for having us here. You are the man. This is a beautiful shot. You're sorry. Kenny, you're next after her. Sorry.
Gordon, so stand a bit closer to it.
Yes, please stand closer to the mic. Thank you.
How close?
No, just in the middle.
Back a bit.
Just back a bit.
Turn to the left. Excellent.
Is it the right light?
Yes, perfect.
Gordon, so it's a big project to write a book. So what made you decide to write a book?
I always knew that I should write 2 books. And I would use the first book that features the years of working with the Strokes to sell the second book, which is about my piano lessons and my various synthesizer noodlings, okay? But in secret, I knew I would never write either of these books because if I have 5 minutes of free time, I'm going to be at a coffee shop or walking in a town or looking for new jeans. I'm not going to sit down and go like, let's see, chapter 2, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. That's not me at all. But because of the lockdown, it was me for long enough to get that thing finished. Yeah.
So the lockdown wasn't all bad. COVID's not all bad. Got a good book out of it. Just before I bring in Kenny, just to follow up on that. So because it's something that was unfamiliar to you, obviously a very experienced, successful music producer, turning your hand to writing a book. How difficult was it at first?
It wasn't difficult because I also write. I mean, I wrote stories and I wrote lyrics, and writing is something that I've been working on since I was a little kid.
But the actual process of
never something so thick, you know. But it was really just like a bunch of, this is this story, I can do that. And then what happens next is this story. So it was actually very simple and easy and quite quick to write it, but then I had the editing thing. With no, and here's a very funny story. My best friend is a real book person. And I brought her my book 2 months after I'd written, it took me 2 months to write it, basically. And I said, I got my book finished. She said, your book finished? What do you mean? I said, no, I'm done. She said, now you have to edit it. And I thought, in my mind, I thought, she doesn't know that I'm such a good writer. I'm kind of special, I'm kind of gifted, actually. And I'm one of these kind of guys, I don't need editing. It just comes out right. And so I took she wouldn't read it. I took it back to my house a couple days later. I thought, I want to see this thing now. I read it and it was like endless sentences and paragraphs that would go down the page onto the next one. And every time I stopped to think about what I'm going to say next, I automatically made a comma. So there were like 100,000 commas that just needed to be removed. And long story short, 2 months to write and about 4 to 6 months of over 4 different edits. And then when I got with Lucy and Wordville, Ted...
Wordville and Lucy!
Then Ted George said, now we're going to do a little final edit. And his suggestions were phenomenal. It was so cool because I've never worked with an editor and I've never worked with a producer or an engineer before either on my music. I always thought, I don't want to hear what anyone else has to say. So I was a little bit like, my feathers were ruffled. Like, okay, this guy's going to tell me stuff and ask me stuff. Let's see. But it was so cool because he made 100 suggestions, of which all of them were good. I agreed with most of them, and there were a few where I said, "This is how I say it. I'm going to stick to my guns." But there was nothing cheesy. He didn't ask me to do anything cheesy or stupid that made me angry. It was just like, these are very good suggestions, and I'm going to do this and do this and do this, and these 4 I'm not going to do because I want to keep it my way.
Yes, of course.
So it was a great experience, even to the end.
Amazing. Kenny Mulligan is in the house. Kenny, what is your question? Can you move a wee bit closer to the camera?
Okay, yeah.
Just here, that's fine, mate. Perfect.
Pleasure to meet you, Gordon.
Likewise.
And well, you know what, your history and your experience working with different bands, and all the bands that you mentioned tonight, I've had interaction with them in London in various forms, working from EMIs and as a journalist and freelancing, and with NME and EMI and sub labels all throughout the 30 years being down south. What really strung out for me, stuck out for me tonight, was your love of British music, and especially when you mentioned the early, Happy Mondays and the Moog playing on the indie scene, from the Inspiral Carpets and all that sort of thing, and that had an element of like something like the Doors, but had that sort of indie punk thing around it.
Right.
Do you still feel that there's that's still got a lot of reverence today in today's indie music? I mean, in terms of bands you want to maybe work with in future, hopefully the Gyro Babies and producing them, you know what I mean? Or Jack O'Tray's Mark's bands, or so where does your circumference sort of stop? Is it specifically rock? Is it what is it really magnetise you to the sort of tracks that bands that you'd really want to work with, and is there a certain, we've all got that pull to certain tracks or certain bands. Have you identified what it exactly is?
Sure, I have, and I totally get your question.
Yeah.
There's 2 things. First of all, the bottom line, it has to be innovative. It can't be like jumping on a sound and a lyric style or a story. And every little element, there's so many elements in music: the beat, the sound, the way they look, their attitude, the way the voice sounds, the emotions. There's so many elements that can be copied or boring or not without great innovation. So I don't like any of that stuff. I like stuff that's just like, what the hell am I listening to? So that's the first thing. Like, it has to be completely innovative and groundbreaking. And at the same time, this is a really unquantifiable, it just has to hit you like, this is for me. You know, because there could be great music that's innovative that I just goes over my head. I would never play it again. You know, I won't Shazam it instantly. But I go into a shop all the time, or I'm in a restaurant, like, what the fuck's that? I gotta find out what it is. Oh, shh, everybody be quiet, be quiet. You know, I love it when I find something that hits me. So it's like the unquantifiable thing that it just speaks right to your heart or to your mind and makes you fascinated.
And the second one, sorry, further up, is there any bands in the UK, particularly now you're in Glasgow, you know, there's not just what's happening over there, you know, the really underground sort of, what we say, alternative, you know, scene, you know. Is there anybody you picked up on that you sort of caught an ear out of your time you've had a listen around about what's happening here? Because it's such a thriving, and I would say that, you know, but is there anybody that's caught your eye?
I think we're coming out of maybe a 15 or 20 year period or something where kind of innovative music with guitars and bands and human players has kind of been really relegated. And I think there's a new generation of young people that are really interested in studying piano and voice, like really performing. I think that's coming back. There are several that I've heard that I really like, and one in particular I just recorded last week in Leeds called The Lounge Society. And they're playing with the Strokes today in Lytham.
That's good.
Yes, and they're really phenomenal. They're everything. Like they did 6 songs in one day because they were so rehearsed and so tight and so on it and enthusiastic. So I think that
you call that radio.
On that point, actually, we released a vinyl, Gyro Babies Through to Utopia, with a small label in England called Grebo Records, and he messaged me when he seen that I was going to be here tonight. He said that we have a common, like a tenacious link, the 7 degrees of separation or whatever it is. So also on that same label is a band called Crash Island, and you mix Strange Shores. He said that I should mention that. Do you remember that?
No. That sounds good. Crash Island?
Crash Island, and this it was called Strange Shores.
Yeah, I think I do remember the name, but I can't remember if that was during the pandemic or something. It was probably just one song or something.
It was one song.
Mixed it or.
Yeah, you mixed one song.
Gave them as advice,
No, you mixed one song.
Okay. Yeah.
Just remember it. How many songs have you mixed? An exact number.
I imagine 3,000. I did 1,000 of my own before I even got into working with other people. So.
Is there any more questions?
Who's your favourite musician of all time?
What a great last question. Who is your favourite musician of all time?
Too many to name, really.
Okay, 5. You get 5.
I have
top 5.
I have a pantheon of musicians that
Top 5.
Kerry Monier, the keyboard player for Gentle Giant, 1.
Okay.
Jimi Hendrix, John McLaughlin, this guitar player, played with Miles Davis and then went into some spacey rock music. Who else is one of my favorite musicians? Keith Emerson from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. A guy named Michael Narada Walden who played drums, phenomenal drummer, and Stevie Wonder.
Yay!
Never talking to that.
That's the pantheon for the moment.
Last up.
Thank you very much to Gordon Raphael, who is going to now be there. Gordon's going to make his way around there. There is a book here for sale. Please buy your book and you can get it signed. You're up for signing?
Thank you.
You're up for
buy
selfies?
the fucking book.
Selfies and signings?
Yeah.
I thought you was going to DJ.
Buy a t-shirt. Buy the book.
And of course, this would not be possible. Let's say some thank yous first of all to Tony. What an amazing Please do, if you take a picture, remember to tag Blitzreig or Blitzreig?
Blitzreig Shop.
Blitzreig Record Shop on Instagram or Facebook. Please do spread the word. Tony's doing some great work here. He looks fabulous. Loads of great stuff here. So thank you, Tony.
Yay!
Thank you to Delboy, our cameraman, for this evening. And thank you to Lucy for making this happen. Shouts to Wordville Press. And of course, the man of the moment, Gordon Raphael. Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise!
We are here to tell people that we hear you. One God will not allow us and people of conscience to lose our morale. We see the crimes of this government.